Welcome, everyone. Bruchim habaim. My name is Anat Bar Cohen, and I'm with the Generations After, the United States, Washington, D.C. area, second generation group. This is an extraordinarily special meeting, something that none of us in the planning groups in Israel and in America know is happening anywhere. It's quite unique. Before we begin, I just want to let you know that we're recording this introduction segment, and then we will stop recording when we break up into groups, and then we will begin again at the end. So we'll record the beginning and the end, just to protect everyone's privacy and to make the meeting go the way it should be going. As we said before, please be sure your name is on your screen, so that we can call on you in the small groups and we can divide you up properly. All right, so we're very excited about this program that's about to take place, and it's taking place between two parts of one family, the Holocaust descendant families in the United States and in Israel.
Shalom, I'm Margalit Ganor from Israel. From the Israeli second generation group. In Hebrew, it's called Dorot Hahemshech. And I'm also on the planning committee for this program. As we all know, the Holocaust is not the property of one person. It concerns all of us, since all of us, we are Jews.
The events of October 7th and their aftermath have shaken Israel and the entire Jewish community around the world to its core. But what has been the impact of those of us who have lived with echoes, symbols, images, stories, and deep emotions of the Shoah all our lives?
I'm one of those people, Anat, you're talking about. I'm considered a Holocaust baby survivor. In 1942, my Zionist parents attempted to flee with me from Nazi-occupied Romania to Palestine. Instead, they found themselves escaping from one place to another for 4 long years. They hid, I should say we, but I cannot say we. They hid with me in a dark chicken coop. They were shipwrecked, left to die on a desolate Turkish beach, and were finally imprisoned in Cyprus for 2 years. I do not remember anything until the age of 6, but psychologists say the body of a child remembers. Now, after October 7th, when I hear the stories of the abductees, about the lack of air in the tunnels, about the necessity to whisper, the threat to talk, my throat involuntarily constricts and I cannot breathe. And I remember my mother at a very late age told me she had to put her hand to cover my mouth so that the Nazis would not find our hiding place. So this is the impact on me.
How we are coping and reacting to this extra layer of intensity that our heritage imposes on us. How are we doing that? And what are the differences we face given where we live and the immediate and existential threats looming over us? We wanted to explore those questions and also to learn how we can best support each other during this difficult time. The Generations After reached out to the Dorot Hahemshech, the Next Generations group in Israel, and found we were eager partners in this endeavor. We believe this meeting is unique and a bold experiment, one that has not been attempted before. With great hopes for a continuing dialogue to keep this relationship growing, we turn to you, the audience, to delve into these questions for the next hour and reveal some of the responses.
I now call upon Esti Lidar of the Next Generations in Israel, who has beautifully captured some of the feelings motivating this program in the following poem. Esti, please.
אני רואה אותך מהעבר השני של הרחוב, יושב בכל יום עם האספרסו שלך. אתה כל כך מוכר. אני רוצה לגשת אליך ולשאול, אולי קר לך, למרות שיש עליך סוודר עבה? והאם יש לך מספיק סוכר באספרסו? יום יום אני תוהה מולך. האם גם אתה נמצא בלילה בתוך המעברים האסורים ובמחבואים האפילים? האם אתה שומע בשנתך את הקרונות המצפחים עושים דרכם אל המוות? והאם גם לך הייתה שם סבתא, שריחות החמאה והקינמון שלה הסגירו אותה, ואתה לא שמעת אותה מעולם, אומרת לך ביידיש, אני אוהבת אותך. ואיך אומרים ביידיש, אני אוהבת אותך? האם הייתה לשתינו אותה ילדות המגומגמת, הערפילית, בצל האנשים העצובים, השותקים, הזועקים בלילה אל אמא? האם הייתה גם לך אותה הילדות השמשית למחצה, הורגת למחצה? והאם באת מאותן ארצות הערפל שלי? האם ראית גם אתה את הזאבים האפורים פורצים אלינו מתוך דפי האגדות? האם חיבקה גם אותך זרוע ממוספרת, וכל ספרה וספרה שלה סיפרה סיפור משלה? אבל כל שאני יכולה לעשות זה לרצות לגעת בך ולתהות, האם יש לך מספיק סוכר בשביל האספרסו שלך?
I think you have artistically and beautifully this group for our discussions. All right, so here, this is how the experiment will work. We have carefully divided the group into smaller rooms with about half the participants from the US and half from Israel. Each of the breakout rooms will have between 10 and 12 people, something like that, maybe a little more, and a facilitator who will keep us all on track. The key question for discussion will be, how have you, as a 2G, been impacted by the events of October 7th? The facilitators will help us stay away from politics, debates on how to run the war, ceasefire questions, the day after issues. We're not discussing those. So the facilitators will keep us from doing that. Please keep in mind. The question will be, how have you, as a 2G, been impacted by the events of October 7th? If there is time, which we're thinking there might not be, but if there is time, we can also discuss how we can best support each other during this difficult and prolonged time. You will be given a 10-minute warning 15 minutes into the discussion. The facilitators, with your help, will then summarize the key 4 points of the discussion so that when we come back to the main group, all of us together, each one of the facilitators will give a 4-minute or less summary of what happened in your group. We wish you an excellent and meaningful discussion with our newly found brothers and sisters. Okay, so now we're going to break up into our rooms. I just want to thank you all. I don't know how the other groups were. Our group was really intense and wonderful and interesting and important. As we all assemble, I also want to remind you that we're encouraging donations to the Israeli group, Hostage and Missing Families Forum, in honor of this program. And so here you see the connection, the QR code for that group, and the URL for that group is in the chat. So please support it and donate to this group. All right, we're we're going to hear now, we're eager to hear a short report from each of the facilitators, no more than 4 minutes, from each of the groups on the top key 4 or 5 topics of discussion. Margalit, you're going to handle this part of it.
I call upon Anne-Marie to be first and tell us about what happened in your group.
We had a really good discussion, a really good beginning of a discussion. I think we could have used several more hours with no problem. So just to summarize some of what we said, I think there were 9 of us in the group. Almost everyone said that they were grateful that their parents were not alive to have witnessed what has been going on since the attacks in October. I was surprised. I thought I was the only one, but many of us shared that thought. We talked about the importance of connections with each other in the light of growing anti-Semitism, anti-Israelism, that Jews in all parts of the world need to connect and figure out how we're going to deal with this together. Let's see. We also focused on the importance of the moment that we heard about the news, where we were, what we were doing, what our thoughts were at the very moment. We talked about our connectedness to many of the people who were directly involved, either in the army or as hostages, that we have very strong connections to each other, that even though those of us in America are far away, we have immediate connections with family, and so we're continue to be extremely concerned. And many of us talked about being overloaded with the horrors of the stories, and that we cannot watch the news too much, that we have to back off and take care of ourselves, and that we give ourselves permission to not feel guilty about that. And then finally, we had several thoughts about how this can proceed in the future. I think we all would like to see some continuation of this process, and in terms of specific thoughts, that we will include those in the evaluations after this meeting is over. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. When you were talking, I just saw the difference between one group, another group. So, okay, let's hear from Lila.
Thank you. We had a very dynamic discussion, 10 folks. And similar to the beginnings that Anne-Marie shared, the shock, the dismay, then the eagerness, the activity to work hard on behalf of our Israeli cohorts and try to make contributions, statements to our government and so forth. The sense of not wanting to feel victimized. So my guess is that there were similar emotions that all the groups would have expressed along these lines. It was very difficult to separate political discussion from which segued us into the next question of how do we support one another. And many excellent things were expressed about manipulated press and what we can do here in America to change, in actively supporting our Israeli cohorts, to changing some of the political rhetoric around this. One comment that I thought was quite beautiful was that the generation of Israeli citizens, the second generation who settled in Israel, raised a remarkable new generation, this young group who is now fighting, putting their lives on the line on behalf of Israel. That it's quite remarkable to see this extraordinary heroism. Dina, is there anything you want to add to some of that thought?
Well, one of the things that came up was not looking at ourselves, both Americans and Israelis, as victims, but rather to concentrate on the acts of heroism that were witnessed not only by the Israeli soldiers, but also by the civilians, and the feeling that those stories are not widely known outside of Israel. And one of our members hopefully is going to put together a list of English language publications
that do focus on those stories.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me call upon Esti now.
Yeah. Hi, okay. I feel that there were many voices in our group which were very similar, actually. Many, we were not many, we were 10 people, I think, expressed their feeling about the parents. They were glad that the parents are not here, are not alive anymore, to see what was happening. And it was connected to something that they were saying, especially, actually, our American sisters and brothers, but it is also the feeling of the Israelis that we got some promise that it would never happen, that the anti-Semitism and what happened in the Holocaust would never happen, and it is here. And it is here, and it's very frightening, especially for our brothers and sisters in the United States, in the universities, that the young generation is suffering in the universities, in the campuses, and it is bringing up two conflicted feelings. On one hand, it was the feeling of defiance came up, that that it is something which is very difficult to see, that people would take out the mezuzah, or that they will resist Jewish signs or symbols, and that they are very defiant against it, and that they would go on showing themselves as proud Jews, and they will fight. On the other side, they came under feeling that it's very frightening, like the feeling that you cannot read an Hebrew book or go with them again David, because it's dangerous and frightening. They came also the feeling that of trauma, and I think that it had to do also with speaking about how can we support each other. Some came up with a feeling that they would like to come to Israel to help, to donate. They are donating, they are coming, but there came up a very exciting feeling that we should meet again and again and again and again, especially with the young generations who need to be encouraged, who need to be hugged, who need to be, we need to talk to them, because the feeling is that otherwise we are going to see post-traumatic young American generations growing up in America because of what is happening now, and that this is our maybe task, the second generation here and in the United States, to do something about it. So that's what came up in summary.
Thank you. Wow, a lot. Rachel, please. Please unmute yourself.
I am unmuted, and I feel muted. We had so many heartbreaking. I'm brokenhearted by what I heard from our Israeli friends, and I think it's very similar to what our American friends were feeling. The rise of anti-Semitism here, we spoke about it, but more as an offshoot. The concern seemed to be with Israel. Our Israeli friends, not everybody felt the same way, and that's what makes giving a fast report difficult. But there is a recognition that all of us, it's embedded in us that we are the children of Holocaust survivors, they don't, sometimes one person said they don't even think of themselves that way, but yet that's everything they've ever done in their lives is because of that. And so this is a very difficult time. It feels there's a lot of anger and some hopelessness. I heard for Israel. That never again is just a slogan. That it's not real. Never again keeps happening in Israel again and again. Several people talked about how they feel like they've been through war after war after war after war. And they feel they're going to make it through because they will, because they always do. And but it's we could hear it's been draining. It's exhausting, I think, were the words that were used. And people talked about how they will defend themselves. And one person said her mother, when she got through something horrific, her mother said, "We've been through worse." And how that is a two-sided statement, because it kind of denies what the terrible thing you're going through, but it also reminds you of what you made it through. And that was where we were as we came to a closing. It was there were some things that were troubling. There were, one person said, American Jews think of Israel as their escape hatch, basically, that if the Holocaust comes, they'll have a place to go, that it's like their summer house. And so we ran out of time to look at that further, but I think that's was an important, honest feeling from our Israeli friends. We weighed on the side of Israelis in our group. The few Americans we had were very much Israelis as well. I probably the only one who didn't live in Israel at some point. We didn't get to talk too much about the anti-Semitism, but definitely the people in our group understood and was shocked by it, that this could happen. So in summary, every person had different points of view, very different points of view, but everybody was coming from the place of being a 2G and living in Israel. It was profound. I thank everyone in my group. We got thrown out of our group before we could say goodbye. I want to thank you all. It was, I won't forget a word. I have 4 pages of notes and I'm going to stop there.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you very much. Ronnie, where are you?
So we had a very interesting group, about 8 people. And I think we saw some differences between people. I didn't have enough time to expand on it. So first thing we were very, very common was the shock of October 7th. It was a shock. It took some time for everyone to come back to reality, to grab what the shock was about. Some people have talked about how for days on end, they were with the TV, they couldn't get out of the news. Sometimes it caused them depression. Really, it was very frightening for many, many people. But then there was a feeling that at the same time, we were very disappointed in America. I talked about disappointed in the people who were not Jewish, who didn't support Jews, who suddenly, when Jews needed other people to support them, they weren't there. And they themselves had been there for equity. So there's a few stories about that I found very interesting. But there was also the other end. On the one hand, people said, listen, the PR is terrible. Everyone sees the bad stuff going on. But I also saw the wonderful things happening. The support people are showing. Some people in America are showing very, very strong support. In Israel, we talked about the amazing volunteering that went on in Israel. The simple people that went out to help and to volunteer in every possible way. It's a resurgence of inspiration and identification with the country. There was some expression that people did not like, using the word Shoah or Holocaust to compare October 7th. I think most people thought that it was not the same, obviously not the same. Some people didn't like the comparison at all. But there were some people in the group said, well, there was a Shoah, and those few days for those few people. When I heard the stories of children hiding under the bed or in the closet, immediately erased the idea of the thoughts and the memories that I heard about my whole life from my parents. But here was a very interesting point. I asked the group, who feels that as a 2G, they were more impacted emotionally than other people? And of the 8 people, we said 5 people said they didn't think they were more impacted than other people who were not 2G, and 3 people said they were. I found it to be very interesting as a researcher recently to find out why they thought that. What was the difference in their feelings? And of course, we didn't get into that too much. What we can do for each other, well, we didn't got much time to talk about that, but one idea was we got to continue discussing things because we have a lot of connection between us, but we're not living the same reality. And very, very clearly, the Americans talked about the anti-Semitism and their position in society. The Israelis were a little bit far from that. They really don't experience that in that area. But I think there was also one last comment that one member made that she really could not stand the idea of tourists coming to the kibbutzim now and making it kind of a historical tour and before they go to Auschwitz. The juxtaposition of the Poland trip and the trip to the kibbutzim is something that people really found very, very insulting and abusive. But all in all, I think it was a wonderful discussion and we need to have more. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronnie. And as for my group, on a personal note, it was very difficult to talk to people and also to sum it up. So this is a conclusion that I take for myself. Anyway, in general, Anat mentioned that there was not such a big difference between what Israelis said, Americans said. There were general feelings of people in the group without reference to where they come from. Also, in my personal feeling, there was not so much reference to where we come from as second generation. There was a mentioning of the Shoah and that it's not comparable, but the deepest feelings of being second generation and what happened to us on October 7, we didn't get to it too much. A variety of feelings came up. On the one hand, horror, and it's Armageddon, and it was like in the Ukraines or even worse, and people were directly affected, and the people in the group from Israel told what happened to their son or daughter or family. One of the people have a friend who is an abductee. And so a lot of feelings came up from the horror side, but also the feeling of hope that came up from the fact that people volunteered so much. This is what Israelis said, of course, that people volunteered so much and gave so much from themselves, even during these difficult times. There was talk about the collapse of faith in the army. It came back later, but faith that we are in an independent state. Someone mentioned the Yom Kippur War. This happened immediately after 6th of October was 50 years for Yom Kippur War, and on the 7th, it's this war. And again, the same thing happens, and the army fails, but later on, the army came on and corrected this. Also, there was faith that more people, do you say people or peoples? People of the world will come up for Israel, and the disappointment that this didn't happen on a larger scale. Never again came up. I will not mention what other groups said. Let me just see if we have something more to add. How quickly the world turned against us. And I think that's most of it, of the additions to what was said. Shelley, you wrote down. Do you have anything to add, please?
No, I mean, although there are definitely differences across the groups, there are some similarities. For example, the anti-Semitism, particularly in America, that was noted. And as you said, the disappointment in the lack of support of other countries. But I think you've captured it.
Thank you. Anat,
Okay.
back to you.
Yes, thank you. I think that summary was really fascinating. I mean, it really shows where we have common ground, but also where the differences are, and how unique some of our responses have been. And also, I think it really does. It sounds to me like we've laid the groundwork for additional sessions, and our planning group will go back and really consider and discuss the possibility that we will all meet again and have another session to further this dialogue. We are going to be sending you an evaluation email, so I hope you will all respond so that it will help us in our planning about how you experienced this event and what you would like to see in the future. So now I would like to draw your attention to the screen and all the thank yous on the screen. Thank you so much to the members of the Dorot Hahemshech and Generations After Planning Committee for this wonderful program. Thanks to the moderators, the facilitators, the technical consultants, and of course, thank you to all the participants on both sides of the ocean. We're going to take us home now, so please watch this incredible song as we say Toda Rabah, Leitraot, bring them home, and Am Yisrael Chai. Could we all stop for 1 second, please? And Ephraim, can you take a family picture of us?
One, two, three. אחד, שתיים, שלוש.
להתראות כולם.
להתראות. Thank you.
תודה רבה.
ביי, ביי.
Everybody, well done.